Hello, everybody, and welcome to ZTV Live. I'm Susan Mulligan Fleischman. So glad that you're here. Today is Tuesday, July 28th, and tonight Ralph Peluso is back with another episode of Reading, Writing, and Ralph. And Ralph's guest tonight is Robert Hoppensteadt. He'll be on in just a minute after a few words from our sponsors and also some news items. This episode of ZTV Live is sponsored in part by Delia's Mediterranean Grill and Brick Oven Pizza. Featuring Pasta Night Tuesdays, Wine Down Wednesdays, and Pizza Night Fridays, Delia's offers something for everyone. The dining room and patio are open, and carryout or delivery is also available. Visit deliasbrickovenpizza.com. And by Sicilian Pizza in Del Rey on Mount Vernon Avenue. Check out Zebra food editor Debbie Critchley's outstanding review in our July print issue of the Zebra, and then go see Sicilian Pizza for yourself. Buy one extra large gourmet pizza and get one free cheesecake. See if that doesn't leave you singing arias. Visit SicilianPizzaVA.com. And by Tizo Vietnamese Cuisine on Dow Avenue off Van Dorn. Tizo is your destination for tasty, nutritious, and authentic Northern Vietnamese food. Tizo offers healthy and affordable meals in a friendly and casual environment. Visit TizoRestaurants.com. If you'd like to sponsor ZTV Live, we'd love to have you on our team. Email ads@thezebrapress.com. That's ads@thezebrapress.com. And now just a couple of items in the news today. The National Breast Center Foundation is hosting a modified version of its annual fundraiser, a combined golf and tennis tournament at Bellhaven Country Club, Monday, August 31st. Executive Director Martha Carucci said the need for services of the National Breast Center Foundation is greater than ever. There are more than 300 women in the Latino community alone in Washington, D.C., Maryland, and Virginia waiting for a mammogram right now. Prolonged testing loses that vital advantage of early detection. The pandemic and resulting distancing requirements had caused the local nonprofit to postpone its annual golf tournament last May. The organization is moving forward with a revised version of its primary fundraiser in October, the Walk to Bust Cancer, creating a virtual event with some in-person features, so stay tuned for more details on that very popular fundraiser. For more information and to donate and or register for the August golf and tennis event, please see our story on thezebra.org or visit www.swingtobustcancer.org. Health experts say that wearing a mask can stop the spread of COVID-19. Now studies prove that those words are accurate. An analysis of 20 studies available on thinkglobalhealth.org and conducted by the Institute for Health Metrics and Evaluation at the University of Washington finds that if 95% of U.S. citizens wore masks, infections would drop by 2/3 and deaths would drop by 1/3. Virginia is one state where residents are using masks regularly, with our doctor governor's order to wear them indoors. Other states include Maine, New York, and Massachusetts. Still, the percentage of people wearing masks is only 50 to 60%. While considerable and unfortunate controversy exists, the analysis concludes that using a mask is really one of the best tools available for preventing the spread of COVID-19. Here at ZTV Live and the Zebra Press, we encourage mask wearing. In fact, if you sign up for a subscription for the ZTV newspaper to be delivered to your home, you will get a free mask, and there's a nice discount promotion going on right now. Enter Neighbor10 when signing up and get $10 off your subscription. Visit thezebra.org and look under the subscribe tab. On ZTV Live, we encourage viewer participation, so please type in, give us a hello, let us know that you're watching. I see Nancy Campbell-Gorski, a faithful viewer, is watching again tonight. Hi Nancy, thanks for saying hello. And trivia winners, there will be trivia questions tonight, and so we want to make sure that everybody out there is going to answer our trivia questions. If you win, please be sure to send your address to us via private messenger so we can get the signed copy of Robert's book to you tonight. And now I'm going to bring on Ralph Peluso. Hey Ralph, how are you?
Great, Susan. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. It's very good to see you. Thanks for waiting through the through the news and our a few words from housekeeping.
It's not a problem. And tonight there's no thunderstorms, so hopefully
Yes.
everything will go smoothly. And we
Yeah.
have on Robert Hoppensteadt, who wrote a very timely novel about a virus. And it's a great book. I enjoyed reading it, and let's bring him on.
Good.
Robert?
Hello,
Hello.
Robert. You're on.
Okay, great. Hi, everybody.
Hi, Robert. How you doing?
Oh, hi, Susan.
Hey. Okay, I'm gonna leave it to you, Ralph. You and Robert take it away.
Great. Well, Robert, you currently live in Alexandria, but why don't you tell our viewers a little bit about yourself?
Okay, briefly, I had kind of a long career, a lot of varied things. I worked as a carpenter for a lot of years. I worked in the Forest Service. I worked as a programmer early on in the Silicon Valley and got into some startups there in the Bay Area. And then 2006, we moved out to Virginia from San Francisco and wanted to be closer to my wife's father. And I worked in the government contracting world there until I was able to retire early. I guess as far as the writing goes, I've always liked to write. I wrote a novel back in 1990 and realized that, you don't just write a book and then get it out there. You have to get an agent and all those things. And so I did. I took a year off of a pretty lucrative business and tried it. And then I went into writing poetry and ran an open mic in San Francisco for poets for quite a while in Burlingame, which is just south of there on the peninsula, and got quite a bit of poetry published. And we had this little group of people that would go around and we made it on TV a few times back there and along the coast. And some of them have become very well-respected poets, but I always was more interested in prose. So I always wanted to get back to writing novels, and so The Shelter was the first one I had published. It was picked up by Solstice, and I just had another one published a couple months ago, and so things are going.
Great. So, which poet did you draw from?
You know what? This is going to sound terrible, but I didn't even like poetry that much. So, mine was often a lot of free verse. And I got my inspiration from the people I was writing with. If you look up people like right now, Lisa Ortiz, she's pretty well published, a Santa Cruz poet, and Amy McLennan and Amy Miller are up in Ashland, Oregon. They're teaching and pretty well respected, and so yeah, I didn't, and that's probably why they're so successful. They just they got their MFAs and they just eat and breathe poetry. But I love writing it, and people like to hear what I wrote. A lot of my poems were pretty long and almost prose-like stories in themselves, although a few of the shorter ones did pretty well too.
So you had a little Samuel Taylor Coleridge in you?
Yeah, there you go.
Good. So how do you transition from? Let me start that. So you make the transition from poetry to prose, and how did you decide on the shelter, and the topic of a virus?
Well, the first book I wrote in the early '90s was kind of a virus. I've always been fascinated by how quickly the human race can adjust. For instance, if you took a number of people from this world and put them on another planet, within one generation, that would be their home and that would be all they knew. And so the idea of rapid change and sort of the fragility of civilization, that, this idea that we're all walking around in a normal place and, we go to the store and we get in our cars and we go to work and we go to school and all those things, how quickly that would crumble when put against certain pressures. They say that in any sort of center of, where there are a lot of people live, there's no more than 2 weeks food supply at any one time. And so if that stopped coming in, if the water stopped running, if the electricity shut down, I like to think about those things. And this book, I was reading an article about a virus that was found 100 feet down in Siberia 30,000 years ago. It froze down there. And when they put it in some water, suddenly all the amoebas that were in the water died. And they said, what happened here? And then they noticed that this virus had revived after 30,000 years being frozen. And so that's where really the germ of this idea came from. I've always, when I was a kid, I wanted to be an anthropologist, and I'm very interested in history too. And I wanted an isolated place so I could control the breadth of the story.
Yeah, so you picked Nome, Alaska, which was your starting point, and an archaeological dig, and the characters come across the remains of a woolly mammoth. I think we have a picture of a woolly mammoth, and then the story takes off from there.
Yeah. Well, what happened? The premise is that the earliest people built shelters out of woolly mammoth bones, and they've actually found these shelters, and that's where the name of the book comes from. And this group had been pushed by another group to the edge of the Russia, and there was a land bridge between Russia and Alaska. So these hunters go into Alaska across this land bridge looking for a new home for their people, and they find this, what they think is a perfect spot, and build a shelter out of mammoth bones that have piled up against a hillside there. And one of them gets sick, and then they all but one of them die, and they die inside this shelter. And then eventually the permafrost covers them up, and so then when they find this shelter, that virus is hiding in there. The one that killed all those hunters is still in there alive, and that's, somebody gets cut, and it comes back again.
Yeah, and the topic is very timely because of what's going on across the world with the COVID-19 pandemic. So what are some of the takeaways that the readers should have in reading your book?
Well, first of all, I hope they just enjoy it. It's exciting, it's an adventure, and I think that I hope it kind of walks them through what can happen. I wrote this book before all this came out, obviously, but I'm in kind of a twisted way, a little bit proud of myself that I anticipated some of these things that would happen, sort of the miscalculations of the government and politics getting into it, and people not taking it seriously at first. And I think one thing we should always be aware of is that nature is out there, and just because we have this insulated existence in our civilization, it's still right at our doorstep. And I didn't write this for anybody to be frightened. It's pretty extreme. The R naught of, for instance, COVID, I think is 2, but they're not even sure about that yet. I put the R naught of this at like 30, which is double measles. And this has like a 10% survival rate at best. So it's not like if Ebola got supercharged and went airborne. So, things have happened. Half of Europe died just a few hundred, if you put lifetimes back to back, that was just maybe 5 lifetimes ago. Half of Europe died with the Black Plague. And they don't know why bubonic plague went pneumonic, which is what happened there. So, in all my writing, I want people to just have a little more sense of wonder at the earth that we live on, and the planet, and the fragility of everything that I think a lot of people take for granted. They get so wound up in their daily lives, and they don't have the time to think about those things. And maybe various books like mine can help them to do that.
So your main character, Matt. And he and his friends across an archaeological dig, And we have a picture of a real dig, thanks to you, Robert. So describe Matt, the character, after that, and what he was about.
Sure. Well, Matt actually found these. He found this site. A big part of the story that adds a little bit to the atmosphere of it is the fact that it's in the summer in Alaska, and so it's always light. And it's like midnight. He's driving back. He thought he was going to go to a party. He's a young man, and he's a young native up there, and he has to go to the bathroom. So he gets out of the truck, and he does. And when he looks up, he sees these mammoth tusks sticking up out of the ground, and that's how he finds it. He is he's just a local kid. He had a lot of stuff he was going to do. He was orphaned. His parents had a fishing boat, and they went out in it one day and got killed. He was raised by his grandmother Annie, who owns a gift shop in Nome, and he's kind of just a jack of all trades. He works for the BLM, fixing culverts and fence and building sheds and things like that. And he does some work with his grandmother in the shop, and his best friend is a mechanic who wanted to be an engineer. One of the things, I lived in Austin, Nevada for several years, which is a town of 375 people, 100 miles from any other town. And so I got a feel for sort of the rugged small town mentality and way of life. That's kind of how I see him. He's content with his life. He's 22, 23. He hasn't got a lot of dreams until he starts working with the archaeologists that come into. He's kind of a local celebrity after he finds these things, and he's getting a lot of praise for not hijacking the bones and leaving, with them trying to make money. He didn't loot the site; he turned it in, and so when he gets hired by these archaeologists, he then does kind of have a dream again of maybe going to school and at the University of Alaska and getting a degree, and gets fired up about that until everybody starts to die.
Yeah, and just for clarification with our viewers, BLM in this case is Bureau of Land Management.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Bureau of Land Management.
So just so we make sure we have that straight. And he learns a lot of lessons, I think, throughout this process. The impact of fear, the impact of carelessness, what it takes to see good when you see good leadership. And then, of course, he ends up having relationship with another character in the book, Molly. So explain her role in the storyline and also in his transition, I think.
Okay. He's always had a crush on her. She's kind of working now as a secretary at the Bureau of Land Management. And she wound up in Nome. She went up there with a friend of hers to go to the Iditarod, and she just never left. She's a rich girl from Alexandria. And she's kind of running through a lot of guys. The guy she's with at first there is, she hooked up with him in a bar because they had an open mic and he could play the guitar kind of better than anybody else in there. She thought, okay, this guy's all right. They're actually a bunch of drug dealers who were hiding up there. They had to run away from Portland because they'd stolen from a drug dealer there, and they were trying not to get arrested or killed in this house there. And so Molly's got a great heart, and she's very loyal, and she's very intelligent. And she kind of is the driving force behind Matt's growth early on. He's really doesn't have a lot of experience with women, and he's kind of clumsy, and he's kind of not very worldly. He grew up in Nome, and he didn't have a lot of exposure to the rest of the world. And so the two of them really complement each other through all of this.
Yeah, as they say, it always takes a great woman for someone to become a good man. So,
That's right. And I don't think Matt would have made it without her.
I don't think so either. talk about Annie, Matt's grandmother, because she is important to him in this storyline.
Yeah, she was one of the hardest parts to write. What happened there, I won't give it all away, but she's an elder person there, and she has memories still of when the local Native American population were given numbers instead of names, and some of the forced teaching that they had, and some of the way they were treated. But she's very dignified. She's kind of loved by everybody in the town. And when Matt's parents were killed, he was on a field trip with his school, and she drove out there and told him flat out and said, "Now you're living with me." And they've just had this bond. She doesn't have a huge part in the story, other than I think she's responsible for Matt not growing up to be kind of a troublemaker, and she kept him on a straight path. And I think when what happens, that's one of the turning points in his life that really kicks him out and into the world and makes him have to take charge of his own situation.
Yeah, that's a good synopsis of Annie. One of my favorite characters was Joey Covington, and so you chuckle. Tell the viewers about her.
Well, she's with they decide eventually to send the National Guard in, and initially when they first fly in there, it's meant to be sort of a rescue and to help them. Their hospital is overwhelmed. They don't really know what's going on. It still hasn't really gotten out what's happened. The news is leaking out kind of, but this got such a fast burn rate. People get sick and they die within a few days. And she's kind of stunned by what happens when she gets there. Her name is Joey, but she's the female commander of the National Guard unit that goes out there. And so they all fly in, and that's all kind of dramatic when that's going on. And then she goes into the hospital and gets walked around in this fancy PPE that she has and see what's going on. And then a nurse tells her she can't come out of the hospital wearing that stuff. So she has a meeting with somebody outside there. And I don't want to give too much of the story away, but what winds up happening is that the government decides that probably everybody there is infected. There's no way to save them. And so it goes from a rescue mission to a containment mission, and that changes everything, and it's hard on her. But some of the decisions she has to make afterward also are excruciating, obviously.
Yeah.
And, I worked out a way that some people are immune, and it actually has a basis in science in that all of us are carrying around within our DNA bits and pieces of ancient diseases. And so that's what I went with this. The people that were immune or that would recover had some kind of DNA. If you didn't have this DNA, you were pretty much going to die. And ones that lived didn't get sick or didn't get very sick. So she was, I think she's a great role model, and she kind of steps up, but she has a lot of contradictions in her decision-making process of what she has to do as a military person as opposed to a human being.
Yeah, she got caught between the proverbial rock and a permafrost.
Yes.
But she adds a lot of value to the book, and she really is in a tough situation most of the time. The final character we'll talk about had a small role, came in at the very end, but had a big impact on the lives of the main characters, and that was Juniper.
Yep.
And how did you develop her, and tell the fans why she's a little bit important?
She's I tried to write the book. I don't want to give away the ending, but I tried to not leave it bleak. A lot of these dystopian things, it's really popular to just leave you feeling like you want to bring your own death. I didn't want to leave it negative. I wanted to leave some hope in the world. And what Matt figures out one day sitting on the couch, he realizes that there's probably babies and young children out in the town where everybody else is dead now, and they're probably trapped in these houses. He's driving by a house and he sees a house with a bunch of bicycles laying in the front yard, and he thinks, it just hits him. And so anyway, they get organized, and as they're going through the town looking for these people, Juniper's she's 2, and they find her in an apartment. Her mother's dead in there, closed herself off in another room before she died, and left out a bunch of cereal boxes and open containers of things for her to drink, anything they had in the house. And so, when they find Juniper, she's kind of a very uniting factor within the, she's a victory, as are some of the other things that happen near the end there.
Yeah, she gives them the ability to look for new beginnings and a sense that they can rewrite the future that is yet to unfold.
Right.
So,
yeah.
I know that sounds kind of
she has the openness of a child. When they find her, she just puts her arms around Molly, and that's who's going to help her now.
Yeah. So, in reflecting on COVID-19, what would you change about the lessons from your book versus what we're seeing in COVID-19?
You mean, how would I rewrite the book, or
would you rewrite the book, or?
I don't think so. I think they're two pretty. It's timely in one way, but they're different in the other. I think COVID-19 may be a wake-up call or a dry run. We can see where we went wrong here. This thing is bad, but it's not devastating. Just if SARS or MERS, the more deadly version of that, were to come out like COVID-19 had, we'd have a death rate up around 20%.
Yeah.
And even that would just if you think of the things in society that would start to collapse, the food transportation, the power generation, the water distribution, all of these things would become probably militarized. And so we'd have a much different situation. So this should really open our eyes up as to what it takes to bring people together. And that's not what we're seeing now. World War II, 9/11. It's like if we get attacked by another person or something, we're all hanging flags and we're all marching together and we're all angry at one thing. But this seems to have divided us, and you can't beat anything. The COVID-19 is an enemy, just like something that wants to attack our country. Only it's attacking humanity, and so it can maybe give us a roadmap as how we could maybe do it better if it's really being nature's being pretty gentle right now compared to what it could do.
Yeah, I think you're right. And what we see with COVID-19 and what the readers will see in your book is how swiftly life can change and be redirected. And so there's a strong parallel there in your book. Some of the there's a lot of viral novels out there, and they range from the sci-fi type to the real mortality ones in the end of the world, and the ones that come from outer space. But here you've got such a strong parallel to how quickly the government, and whether state, local, federal, can change people's lives and alter the way we live. It's just dramatic.
It is.
And that's going to lead us to our first trivia question. Robert will send a autographed copy of The Shelter, and I've got one here. It's a well-written book that everyone will enjoy right now, particularly in these times.
Here's the one you get right here. I'll find
Here it is, yeah. And
I got it.
the first question is a fair question. Name the lead male actor in the movie The Outbreak. So, and as soon as we have a winner, I'll see it on the screen and we'll announce it. Let's talk about comparing your work to some of the other novels out there about the virus and what some of the parallels were and some of the main characters. So the first one is Outbreak by Robin Cook. And the lead character is Dr. Melissa Blumenthal. And she comes across a virus that is going to if it progresses at the rate she anticipates, could be worse than the Black Plague. Mm-hmm. And how does Outbreak and The Shelter align?
Well, in Outbreak, they catch it in time, but a lot of it is true, if I recall right. Isn't it in a monkey?
No, that's the movie.
Okay, they changed the book.
Yeah, the movie's not actually based on Robin Cook's book.
Okay.
Yeah, it's in medical facilities and hospitals in Cook's book.
Oh, okay. Then I got those mixed up. I would say too. They did catch it.
They did catch it.
Yeah. So I guess I can't recall that book real well. The one I do recall, because I live right here, is The Hot Zone.
We can talk about that. Yeah.
You know.
That's Juliana Margolis, but yeah, that's a different one. But in Robin Cook's Outbreak, it was a sabotage caused from within, where they created the strain inside of these medical facilities with the intention. And every time she was getting closer to a solution, she got roadblocked by her superiors. And so she had to battle that the way. So it's, and we have a winner on the first trivia question. And that winner is?
That winner is Kelly McConomy,
All
answering
right.
Dustin Hoffman.
Very good for Kelly. All right, so now we'll move to one just a tad more difficult. Name the 19th century book and its classic horror novelist who wrote about a pandemic that wiped out humanity. So the second book we'll talk about is The Andromeda Strain by Michael Crichton. And Dr. Jeremy Stone was the lead character. And this one initiated in outer space, so it's a little bit different. Do you have the picture of the Andromeda Strain? And the striking difference here is how they were dressed. The suits almost look like spacesuits rather than medical garb. So, yeah. But so Dr. Jeremy Stone versus maybe Herschel Button, the CDC guy.
Oh, well, Herschel's a company man when he gets out there, and he doesn't expect to get sick. He thinks it's just he thinks it's a fungus or something, and he brings a couple doctors, and he slowly gets convinced that that it's a serious thing that he's never seen before, and he's seen a lot of things. By the time I write the book, it just kind of flashed in the background. There have actually been Ebola outbreaks in the United States and a different bird flu in the Philippines that killed a few thousand people. But he's not really a military type person. He's not. He's a bureaucrat who has come from. He's seen a lot, but it's all been through the rules of the bureaucracy, and so no matter how convinced he is of things, he keeps listening to his boss Melissa, to do what she tells him to until the end there.
Yeah, that's a good analogy. And in the Andromeda Strain, one of the um, subliminal messages in there. It has to do with this, the odd man theory, which means that only unmarried men can make correct decisions in a crisis.
That's right.
And I'm sure that would fly well today in today's world. The third book we'll talk about is The Stand by Stephen King. And Charles Campion was patient zero in that book. So align him with your patient zero.
Well, my patient zero was a punk. You know, they got drunk and they went out to the site hoping to see it, and they got in a fight with Jason and Matt, who were there to just guard people from coming over there. And the guy fell in and a bone went through his hand, and he got sick. And he's just a drug dealer from Portland.
Yep. And he took off and basically left Nome, I think, with somebody else, if memory serves me.
Oh no, there were several people living in that house. The two Fisher brothers, Denny and Jack. Jack was the one who fell in. Denny was the real kind of driving evil. I won't even call him evil. He's just a bad kid. Ed and his girlfriend were the two that left. What happened was the cops came and knocked on the house they were staying at when they arrested Danny and Jack for getting in a fight. And, so him and his girlfriend, Ed and his girlfriend, left. They were sick. That's actually how the disease escaped Nome.
Right.
They're going to see your dad in Montana, and they get on a bus and just spread it all the way from Nome to SeaTac in Seattle on the bus, and that's that.
Yeah, the Charles Campion, actually, he got sick. He fled, so he spread the disease that way. But Stephen King's work always seems to come down to good versus evil, whereas that's not so much the case in the typical viral novel, or especially with your novel.
Yeah, and I think The Stand had some supernatural ingredients, which I don't have.
Well, I'm glad we got a winner on the second question before I get to the next book. So who is that winner?
The winner is Paul Arneson with Mary Shelley's The Last Man.
Very good. And let me ask the third question, and hopefully we will get a winner on this one as well. This is a book that was published in 1947. It's set in Oran, Algeria, and it's written by a famous existential writer. So what is the name of the book, and who is the author? And The Stand by Mary Shelley. And Lionel Verney is the last man alive on the planet. And at some point, some of your characters, whether it was, have to go through that same feeling, right? Mm-hmm. How is this going to get out, and am I going to be left here? And so tell us about their feelings versus somebody like Lionel, and he actually is the last man, last remnant of humanity.
I think loneliness is a great fear of a lot of people, and it's kind of used, especially I think by Mary Shelley. It was interesting that she wrote that in 1826 or something, and it didn't. And it's put in our future, even though they still have countesses and kings, and there's not much difference in the world. So this man, after they go through all the political gyrations and everything that happened in that book, is left to wander the planet by himself. It's almost more like a a space odyssey where somebody's left stranded on Mars or something. There's probably not much difference. Even the planet's familiar. I think you see little bits of that in the shelter. People trying to, well, for instance, the dogs. Everybody's got dogs, and they're all worried about dying. And Matt notices as he's going around some days that everybody's doors are open, and he's wondering what it is. And then he goes by one house and he sees all these dogs come out, and it's like, oh, it's a very human thing. You love your pets. You don't want them to starve to death in a house where you're laying there dead or whatever. And so they open their doors so the dogs can get out. Pretty soon you have a pack of dogs running around town. But the idea of winding up as the very last person there, I think when you're in the midst of something like what they were fighting in the shelter, they haven't lost hope yet. But
yeah,
I don't know where it's going to go.
Yeah, it's that even, I tell you, a lot of people feel it even today is because we're sheltered, we've been in place for months and months. You get this feeling of isolation, and it's not a good feeling. So I can't imagine that somebody like Lionel Verney, had to have that tremendous feeling you're the only person out there. And I think Matt faced some of that as well. As a couple of times he looked out and he was thinking, like, what do you think?
Yeah, and when Andy died, and he's thinking at all these empty houses or with bodies in them. It's got to be. And it's different. We have a lot of times we don't know who our neighbors are. I don't know who lives above me or next door to me here, and I'm in a townhouse. I mean, I say hi to him, but I don't really know him. And him spending his whole life in a town of 4,000 people, most of those people know each other. They're intimate with each other. They went to school. They grew up together. They went on fishing boats and all these things together. And so with them dying, it's a much more intense.
Yes. No, you're exactly right. And we have a winner for the third book as well. So
we do have a winner for the third book. Congratulations, Michelle Rogers, for coming up with The Plague by Albert Camus.
She is another regular.
She is.
She is. Very good.
She's quick on the draw. Paul Arneson came in just seconds after she did, but she beat him out. So congratulations, Michelle.
Okay.
Have your address, so thank you.
Yeah. And could you put up the final picture? I think it's Dr. Fauci and Dr. Birx. Dr. Fauci and Dr. Birx versus Herschel Button.
I think Herschel's Dr. Fauci and Birx is Melissa, the head there that he's dealing with in DC. She's more political. She knows she's got to work the people above her. She kind of knew what was going to happen when they called the governor of Alaska. Herschel thought they were all just going to listen to him, and she's like, "Well, I'll let you talk," but and obviously the guy was not convinced. So I think there are some parallels there. I think the lower down you get in the management level in some of these agencies around here, and I've worked with a lot of DC agencies, to survive at the higher levels, you have to be more of a political animal. You have to get your money. You have to be able to deal with other agencies. You've got people with different agendas, even though the agency may have its own mission. A lot of the people within the agencies have little mini missions that they're on too, and their own careers and things. So yeah, I would definitely equate Herschel Button more to Dr. Fauci.
Okay. Great. Well, anything before we close you would like to tell the audience? They've been great. They've been active, and you've told us a lot about viruses.
I'd just like to thank everybody for coming on, and I really want to thank you two for having me on here. It's been a real pleasure, and pitch the book, go out and get it. You won't be disappointed. If you have Kindle Unlimited, it's free. I wish I'd have done this a week ago because we had oops.
That's great.
We had a
Sounds like a cat.
yeah, that was a cat. We had a free giveaway for a few days of my book, The Shelter, and the other one, which is called Spawn of the Cataclysm, which is it's more of an adventure set on the west coast of the United States, maybe 1,500 years after a virus has wiped everybody out.
Wow.
And
Wow.
it's a good book too. But yeah, just thank you very much, and I think you'll enjoy the book. And if you're locked up and COVIDing down, it's something, it's a good way to pass a few hours. And I always, the one thing I try to do when I'm writing is not to disappoint the reader. I don't want to put stuff out there and not close the loop on it. So, hopefully when you get done reading the book, I haven't introduced any people or any thoughts or ideas or actions that aren't addressed by the time you close the book. And, hopefully you'll enjoy it.
Great. It's a page turner. 2 weeks from today, our guest will be Roseanne Weissman, and she wrote a fabulous children's book. I went to Africa and I kissed a giraffe, and she will be on, and she's witty, and she'll tell us all about what she's doing and how that story and other stories are helping children develop, and she's a remarkable person, and we'll have her on in 2 weeks. So I can hardly wait for that one.
Terrific. Well, we'll look forward to that one too. And Robert, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you, Robert.
Thank you for
Been my pleasure.
Thank you for another fantastic interview. And we'll sign off to you guys right now. Good night.
Okay. Good night. Thank you very much.
Sure thing.
Right.
And for everybody else, that brings ZTV Live to a close for this evening. Again, thank you so much. We really enjoyed all the interaction with the viewers tonight. Thank you for checking in and saying hello and participating in our trivia questions. We just really love to know that you guys are out there and watching. If anybody is interested in sponsoring ZTV Live, we have some interesting sponsorship ideas that we'd love to present to you. So give us an email at ads@thezebrapress.com, or you can send me an email at susan@thezebrapress.com. So tomorrow night, we're looking forward to Jane Collins. Jane Collins' guest tomorrow night is Mary Lee Anderson of Senior Services of Alexandria. And Thursday night this week, the Virginia Amos show is here, and Virginia welcomes her guest, Mara Benner of Four Directions Wellness. So another wonderful show. So again, we'll see you back here tomorrow night. But until then, remember to be the good news in someone's life.
Great.